welcome to the Belfry. This is the PJ National Golf Course, the par 3 third hole. We're talking in this video about punch shots, and we're going to give you some great methods that you can use next time you practice or go and play, which is going to help you to control the ball flight, lower it a little bit if you're playing in difficult conditions. Just before we get started, in the corner of the screen you should have the details for my social media accounts, so please go ahead and follow me on those. So you may well be in a different place in the world, but here in the UK we are getting into the depths of winter. We are getting some pretty difficult conditions out on the golf course, and one of those which is really difficult to play in is windy conditions. Now, when we are faced with windy conditions, it's really key that we are able to control the ball flight in terms of the trajectory, the spin rate, and the height. Specifically in this video, we're talking about how to hit the ball a little bit lower, which is fantastic if you've got a headwind or even if you've got a crosswind. If we can flight the ball a little bit lower, the flight time is a little bit shorter. We're generally going to be able to control where that ball lands a little bit easier. So when we're looking at trying to play a lower flighted shot, a punch shot, there's really only three things that we're trying to change. We're trying to change the launch angle. So we're trying to get that ball to take off a little bit lower. We're looking to change the spin rate. So we want that ball to spin slightly less. And we're looking to reduce the speed that the golf ball has. So we're looking to get that ball into the air at a slower speed. Those three things together will mean that the ball will take off lower and it will stay lower through its overall flight. The distance is going to be compromised, certainly, and we need to make sure that in our practice we're establishing how far these shots go. But what we're going to do in this video is more cover actually how you're going to hit the shot as opposed to how far it goes. So we would like to make a few changes to our setup because that's really going to be the easiest place to make these changes. Rather than trying to make these changes mid-swing, we can do a lot of these at setup. So if I just take my normal setup here with a 7-iron, what we'd really like to have at impact is the handle slightly more forwards than it would be normally, because what that will do is it will reduce the dynamic loft. The dynamic loft being the amount of loft that the golf club has got at impact. The more the handle goes forwards, the less loft we have on the golf club. So we want that handle forwards at impact. We would also want really the sternum slightly forward of the golf ball as well. Now, as you can see, at setup, my sternum is not a million miles away from being in line with that golf ball. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to move the golf ball a little bit further back in my stance. But I'm going to keep my hands in the same position relative to my body. So you can see here now, my sternum is in front of the golf ball, and already my hands are significantly forward of the club head. What that's going to do is it's going to mean I've got a greater chance of returning with the handle more forwards than it would be normally. That is really key in terms of delivering a lower lofted golf club to the ball. Very simply, if the golf club has got a lower loft, it's going to head off on a slightly lower launch angle, and it's possibly going to have a little bit lower spin as well. So there's our first couple of things kind of ticked off. Now, what we would tend to see is that this starting position for a lot of golfers isn't particularly comfortable. They don't hit many shots from here. And what we'll often find is subconsciously through the golf swing, they will maybe try and get themselves back into a relationship that they are more familiar with. So you can see here now how my sternum is more in line with the ball and the grip is in line with the club head as well. And that to me feels a little bit more familiar because that's where we hit a lot of our shots from. So the second thing I really want you to focus on is that setup, starting with about 55% of your weight on your lead side. And then from there, making sure we don't transfer much pressure or much weight onto this trail side. So I'm really trying to make a backswing feeling like I'm staying in front of that golf ball. That's really key to making sure that we don't undo all the good work that we did at setup, which I see quite commonly. Really important to understand that simply by putting the ball back doesn't change the ball flight. There's nothing to stop me making this move and hitting the ball higher than I would do normally. The setup is certainly going to help, but we need to understand that we've actually got to make some movements in our golf swing which encourage those things to happen at impact. In terms of the speed of the golf ball, two things we're going to try and do here. The first thing I want you to do is actually just go down the handle by a small amount. If we can make the golf club shorter, we're ultimately going to make the club head travel slower, and that's going to mean the golf ball has got less speed. The second thing I want you to really do is actually just make a 3/4 golf swing. Don't make that golf swing as long. And if we don't make it as long, we're probably not going to have as much club head speed at impact. If you can imagine a golf ball takes off at a certain angle, whatever that angle may be, the more speed that golf ball has got, the longer that ball will rise into the air for. So very simply, the harder we hit this golf ball, the higher it's going to go. The The height is what we're trying to reduce here. So by changing the dynamic loft of the golf club, we also reduce the spin rate. And then by making a slightly slower swing, we also reduce the spin rate further, and we reduce the amount of time that the ball is rising for. All of those things together are going to give you a ball flight which is significantly lower than what your normal ball flight would be. And that is absolutely vitally important when you're trying to play in windy conditions. Now, as you can imagine, I can move the ball back a little bit or a lot. So what I really want you to do is play around with this at the range, experiment with some different ball positions, different sternum positions relative to that, different lengths of swing, and start to get an idea about what happens when you make those changes. Because this is not a certain position we're talking about, we're just giving you some ideas that you can play around with, which are going to help you to control the ball flight. Right, let me go ahead and hit one. So it's actually not that windy today, so on this particular hole in these circumstances, I possibly wouldn't hit a lower flighted shot, but just for the video, we'll go ahead and do one. So down the handle, ball is a little bit more back, weight is a little bit more forwards, and I'm going to make a much shorter swing and flight that ball much, much lower. Okay. Difficult to say without measuring, but I would say that was getting close to half the height I would normally hit that golf shot. It's landed just left of the flag, perfect distance. And you'll notice that my follow through is a little bit shorter as well. The reason for that is, one, I had less speed, and two, there's often going to be a little bit more interaction with the ground, which will probably slow the club head down. So if you are somewhere in the world where you've got difficult conditions like we have here in the UK, try those elements to your setup and your swing. You'll definitely be able to vary the trajectory, and if you can vary the trajectory, you can beat the wind and keep those scores where we want them. Thank you very much for watching. All the usual stuff is down below, the comments box, the like button, and the link to subscribe if you don't already. Loads of videos on my channel, more going up each week, so click that link and you'll just get a notification each time I upload a new video. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you again soon.